All right. Sorry for the late delay. If any of you have ever done a LinkedIn Live, it's a thing. It's complicated. It is tough to deal with. It is a bit of a hairdo, as one of my old bosses would say, unfortunately. So thanks so much for being here. I'm going to turn this off. Appreciate it. Thank you, phone. Thank you, music. Thanks so much for being here. Welcome to Employer Brand Breakdown, where I don't break down. We break down an employer brand. We do it looking at employer brands from the outside. And why do we do it from the outside? Because that's where the candidates are, right? They don't know what our brand strategy is. They don't see our decks. They see what we publish. They see what's out on our career sites, what's out on our job posting, what's out on our social media. That's what they know. And that's how they evaluate us. So let's take a look at that. Today, we have a very, very, very special, I should come up with a word for this. Not, is it subject of a guinea pig? Whatever. The matter at hand is a company called Tempus Labs. Now, Tempus Labs is Chicago-based biotech, about 2,000 people, so good size, not quite as big as a Moderna, but pretty darn big. They've really kind of made it out of that biotech, kind of emerging biotech space where it seems like once you crack 700-800 people, you start to really create that hockey stick kind of moment, okay? So, and they're Chicago-based, which is great for me. I'm a Chicago guy right now. I've been here 12 years, 13 years. I guess I'm a Chicago guy. I have a lot of connections with this company, a lot. Not only did I used to work in the building in Chicago that they're based out of, the Groupon building, some people might refer to it as, but I have a lot of friends who work there. Hey, Sky, how you doing? Including one of my best bosses ever. Okay, so I'm not here to beat anybody up. I'm not here to make anybody feel bad. I'm not here to say you suck. I'm here to say this is good, this is working, this is how you can make it better. Okay. The other twist, and I think this is interesting, is that the person who suggested Tempus is my friend Audra Knight. Some of you know her. She's fantastic. She's one of my besties. She suggested this brand because it's interesting to her. So I think here's a situation where we have a company that is growing, suggested by another company in the same space. Now, recruiting tends to be something of a zero-sum game, meaning if I hire someone, you can't. And if you hire someone, I can't for a couple months till they get bored of you and I start leaving messages on their machine or voicemail. I guess they don't have machines anymore. And they start engaging, right? So it's a bit of a zero-sum game. Employer brand is not a zero-sum game. In fact, a lot of what employer brand is all about is trying to get people to self-select out, to say, this is not the place for you. You're not going to want to be here. You're not going to be happy here. Choose another place. And they're trying to make that clear. That's what good employer brand should be doing. So with that, let's dive into Tempus. And of course, that means I have to share my screen because, again, how can you have a presentation without a screen or without sharing it? And here we are. Okay. Hopefully taking a look. So Tempus Labs, like I said, Chicago-based biotech. We're going to start at their culture page rather than their career page because I think they merge together. I'm going to say right now the pages are a little on the thinner side. They could be beefed up. They could be bulked up. They could have more content to kind of explain what they're talking about. This is a WordPress install as far as I can tell based on looking at the code. So they've done a lot. They squeezed a lot of value out of a WordPress installation, which of course WordPress is free and anybody can get that. So they've done a good job making it feel like theirs, not like something out of a box, but something that is specifically about Tempus. Now, first off, I have an affinity for this kind of design work because, again, it's in the building I used to work at. So I kind of like this space, and I've actually been in this space before a long time ago. Neat kind of way of associating what they're about. So this is both numeric and visual, emotional at the same time. So here's 868 miles walked for charity, 18 Tempus volleyball team victories, 30,000 square feet of lab space, 47% female workforce. So some nice factoids to say, hey, this is a taste of what we're about, paired with, over here on the benefits and perks section, these are the benefits and perks. Now, having been in bio a little bit, biotech, space, research, however you want to call it, life science, benefits are usually one of the bigger pages. Biotech, not surprising, tends to care about their employees' well-being. They tend to do a really good job investing in their people and giving them a lot of benefits and perks. Tempus is no different, right? They've got charitable matching program, parental leave, commuter benefits, life insurance, pet insurance, on-site barista, which Sky, let's have a conversation because I'm suddenly curious. You've got a stocked kitchen. You've got discounted Divvy memberships. That's the bike sharing system in Chicago. Company outings, all sorts of stuff. Lots of perks. Then we get into their culture code. And I like this a lot. Now, having looked at more than 60 different biotech, kind of their culture, their values, that section, whatever this idea of, what it's like to be here or what we care about, this is a pretty good job. They have 6 ideas: time, patience, perspective, learning, respect, and saving lives. And rather than just saying it with a graphic from the Noun Project and like a single sentence kind of going, yay us, which is kind of how most companies do it, they've gotten a little deeper. So here's time. Now, by the way, for those of you who remember any Latin from high school or went to a high school that knew anything about Latin, tempus means time. Tempus is all about time, right? Tempus fugit, time, that's Latin for time. So time is clearly part of their culture. What does that mean, though? It means we move fast. There are lots of important things to do, and we know how to prioritize and focus on those things with intensity. We have a bias for action, and we work with a sense of purpose and urgency. Now, by itself, saying things like we have a bias for action, pretty standard stuff, and really pretty standard for biotech. No one goes into biotech because it's boring. No one goes into biotech because it's safe. You go into it because you say, there's an opportunity to change some lives, and we're going to change some processes to make that happen. You need a bias for action. You can't just think about it. You got to do it. So that's pretty standard. But I think kind of bundling it up in this idea of time, which directly correlates to their actual brand, nice. That is really, really smart. It makes me think, oh, this isn't just words on a page. They mean this. This is baked into their DNA. Patience, which is a standard thing biotechs care about, right? They care about doing good. They care about saving lives. They care about maximizing patient outcomes. And that's a pretty common term. Never lose sight of the patient. Every product we build, every service we offer is designed to make a difference in patients' lives using data and technology, right? Empathy, building a successful company is directly connected to helping patients. It is, however, a lot like a company saying our biggest value is our customer. Yeah, and yeah, right? I mean, every company cares about their customer. So I'm not, okay, patience is kind of a de rigueur. It's a thing you're expected to do. They do a decent job of it, spelling it out. Perspective, learning, I think learning is a good one. One of the things that's interesting about biotechs is that they very often have a very learning-focused culture, right? They're in that space where they're inventing the science, and you don't invent the science by just kind of working the mathematical formula till it's done. You invent the science by bringing in new ideas and bringing in new technology and bringing in new thinking to a problem that's staring at you and say, ooh, what does this make me think? How does this change how I approach it? How does this change my perspective? That is a function of learning. If you're in a biotech and you're not learning, I'm not sure if you're doing your job right, okay? So learning is fundamental. Not every biotech underscores that idea of learning. Very often when they do, it's kind of like we're a learning-focused culture, and they just kind of leave it at that. Here we go. Curious minds thrive. We seek and accept feedback. We seek truth. A little more meat on the bone, so to speak. So they're doing a good job here. And I'm not going to get into all of them because you can read those. I'm going to say, for me, and this is a personal feeling, awards that are more than 3 years old aren't really worth kind of showing off, right? They feel like, it's like a restaurant that says, remember when we were really good and we were the new hotness, and now we're just pretty good. So I'd consider pulling these awards. Yeah, a Moxie Award is super cool, but it's also from 2017. That's 6 years ago. I would suggest a company growing as fast as Tempus, that the company of 7 or 6 years ago is not quite the company of today. Okay, so that's their culture page. There's good material here. I think, one other idea. Look at this kind of as a visual mosaic of the experience of working here, right? That's okay. They got coffee, which is great. And you're telling me only 350 cups? Come on, give me a break. They have ping pong tables, and you know how I feel about ping pong tables. Okay, they're standing around saying we've got more than 1,000 employees, which is an old photo because their LinkedIn says they got 2,200. Team outings, charity walks, roof tech deck. Only one feels like what I would suspect a day-to-day operation, a day-to-day workspace is. Here's a biotech with 2,000 people, and the photos they're showing you are of either people not working or people outside the office, which is an interesting take. In the culture section, unless your culture is about, we do good work here so that you can be your best self outside, or so you can have lots of free time, or you can have lots of fun doing charitable walks, or whatever, this is not doing the best job giving me what's it feel like to work there? You're going to tell me that we're going to spend our time doing volleyball tournaments? Probably not. You're going to tell me we're going to walk, our job is to walk miles for charity? Probably not. This is helpful, but I think there's more opportunity talking about the actual work experience. Like, what is it like to work there? Is this a company that starts at 9 every morning, or 8 every morning, or 10 every morning? Is this a wander in when you're ready and wander out when you're done kind of space? What is the work? That's just a tiny little kind of random detail, but those really random details add up. They tell me a lot about a company. The fact that they drink coffee, look, I'm generally pro about, but it doesn't tell me anything about the company. And this is what this page should be doing. You're talking about your culture, connect the culture to the outcomes and the day-to-day experience. Remember, culture is not, you list the values here. This is the culture code. These are your values. These are the things you care about. Your culture is your behavior. What do these ideas, what does this culture code lead to? And I'm missing that part, and I want it. I want to see it very much. And so I know that's hard to say, it's hard to build, but that's really where Tempus is going to win. That's really how they're going to develop a space to say, we care about these things, which means we do this all day, which means we make these kinds of decisions, right? That's how we are, right? It's very easy. We've all been at companies where they said wonderful things on the poster, but those words on the poster didn't turn into actual decisions and behaviors day to day. It's very easy to say nice things. The real work isn't showing it. So Tempus, the opportunity here is to say, you've got the raw materials, take it the next step further and say, what does this culture code mean? What does it lead us to? Okay, so next step is we're going to go to an actual career site, which, okay, here we go. It's a little thin, but you got to kind of scroll down. And once you scroll down, this pops up. So, okay, from a design standpoint, it's not the best user interface. And I get that I'm on a big screen, but still, okay. We're looking for people who can change the world. Pretty standard kind of biotech vernacular, biotech kind of conversation. What Tempus has as its advantage is that it's not based immediately in the Bay Area or in Boston. I think they have an office somewhere in the Bay Area, but their offices are in Chicago primarily, but then North Carolina and the Bay Area. So their competition set is a little funny, right? They're maybe trying to hire people who live in the Bay Area who work for one of the hundreds of other biotechs in that space. And in which case, this language sounds very much like them. It doesn't do a great job kind of differentiating from other companies in Chicago. Huge differentiation, right? This is the job of localizing your brand. How do you make these language choices mean something for individuals who are looking at a job? They might live in North Carolina. They might live in Chicago. They might live in that Bay Area. What do those words mean to those individuals? Does it set you apart enough? Is it helping them make a choice as to whether they should consider learning more or walking away? Okay. Those who question the status quo and don't shy away from tough problems, for builders who are never done building, passionate people with undying curiosity, those who want to attack the most challenging problems mankind has ever faced head on. Again, cool for Chicago, cool for the tech space, kind of standard, kind of expected inside biotech. What's interesting is Chicago is not a biotech hotbed like Cambridge, Massachusetts, or the Bay Area. So it could be kind of amped up, but it's saying what I would expect a biotech to say. And there's also a video. We're not going to dive into the video. I will say, and for anybody from Tempus listening, I had to accept the cookies before I could see the video and before I could actually see the job postings. I don't know if that's a feature or a bug. So I'm just saying that surprised me. In fact, for a while, I was like, ooh, boy, their ATS is down. This is bad. And then I realized that there was a tiny little thing at the bottom to say, hey, accept our cookies. And I said, okay, I guess I should. And having done so, everything turned back on. So interesting to consider. So let's look at a job posting. Bioinformatics. Oh, yeah. So that's right. They are Bay Area, but they're Chicago based and they have a lot of remote work. So, and they even in their searching function are remote friendly, which is cool, right? This is a company that, based on their values, If it seems to me that if you could work remotely, you should. And that makes sense to see that they have that. Remember, your brand is a pattern. You're proving these claims every single second of every single day. Every time someone's looking at you, do they see what they expect? Do they see what your brand claims suggest? Or does it not work? Is it coming at an angle? It doesn't quite not fit, in which case your brand isn't that pattern you think it is. So let's take a look at a bioinformatics engineer, because it's fun to say bioinformatics engineer. And again, it took a while before I hit the cookies, before the job posting came up. So those of you who do this, you know exactly what ATS we're looking at. They have a very particular feel, which is, whatever, no big deal. I always feel like their ATS's job postings, their font is so small. And maybe that's just a personal thing. Maybe that's just me. I don't know. Anyway, neither here nor there. Passionate about precision medicine and advancing healthcare industry. Good claim, but again, not doing as much as it could to differentiate from biotech. And I think biotech is really interesting because for the most part, most companies don't differentiate. They seem very, very comfortable saying and sounding a lot like everybody else. The one word that I think is interesting is the word precision. And that is the thing I think that differentiates them. Not completely, not exclusively, not the only company that can say precision. I can think of about a dozen others who could say exactly the same thing, but it's not standard. It's not like, hey, we're going to reinvent biotechnology, or we're going to change the world, or we're going to save lives. That's pretty standard language. Okay. Recent advancements in underlying technology have finally made it possible for AI to impact clinical care in a meaningful way. Okay, I'm going to say right here, for anybody who saw the word bioinformatics engineer and said, ooh, maybe I could do that job, these two paragraphs are not useful at all. They're just getting in the way. This is boilerplate language. And I know we've all been there. We all have to use the boilerplate very often. But there's no reason to put it at the very front, right? You just did all this heavy work to get a candidate to say, okay, I'll look at that job. And whether it was on a job board like on LinkedIn, whether it was sent by a recruiter who's trying to get you to engage, or whether they were looking on their own, it took effort to get them to this point. Get to the point sooner, right? Talk about at this stage, not that there's this massive sea change in biotechnology. Anybody who clicked on bioinformatics engineer already knows that. This is not information that's necessary for them. What they need to know at this stage is, who are you? What do you do? How are you different? So I might rewrite this to say, Tempus is a growing biotech firm dedicated to precision medicine and to the intersection of precision medicine and artificial intelligence, or to precision medicine based on artificial intelligence. I don't actually know what they do, so I'm just brainstorming here, right? But something that gets tight, to the point, and I bet you could pull it straight off their website, okay? That's it. And then you say, we're based in Chicago and Raleigh and New York and the Bay Area, and this is the stuff, this is how we do things. Great. That would be more useful as someone who clicks bioinformatics. Now, if we were to look at a different job that wasn't a bioinformatics job, this would be useful. If you're looking at a sales job or you're looking at an HR job, this is helpful to know because our competition set is different. So consider making adjustments there. I know that this ATS can embed this stuff at the top and the bottom of everything. That doesn't mean you gotta. You can consider building a library of job postings where the boilerplate differs from location to location or job type to job type. It's worth considering. Okay. Duties and responsibilities. You're going to design and develop software tools. You're going to design, develop, and maintain software to facilitate, develop software. Apparently, there's a lot of software development in bioinformatics engineering. I didn't know about that, but there you go. I bet this could be kind of squeezed together. And in fact, if you look down here, some of these jobs, computational skills in Python 3 or R. Some of those also listed R as, needing experience in R. It would have been useful to say, rather than say, here are the duties and responsibilities, change that to, this is what you're going to do all day. You're going to develop software to improve variant calling, classification analysis, primarily using Python. I bet I just described 80% of that job in one bullet. And I did so in a way that makes you understand, I'm going to need Python 3 to get this job. If I don't have Python 3, I'm not going to get this job. Therefore, you don't have to list it as a required experience. In fact, most of this required experience is not necessarily useful. Remember, you're talking to people who clicked on a job that says bioinformatics engineer. They're not civil engineers. They know what's at stake here. They know what these jobs are. There are ways to do it, to kind of squeeze that together. And by squeezing that, it gives you more opportunity to tell more of your story, the Tempus story. Why are you great? Why are you an exciting place to work? How are you growing? What are the different fields you care about? All that stuff. Remember, we very often fill our job postings with the stuff we think we're supposed to put, and we leave so little room for the really useful stuff. I bet if I looked for other bioinformatics engineers jobs from other companies, I would see a lot of almost the exact same bullets, because that's kind of what a bioinformatics engineer does. In the same way, you don't say looking for general counsel, must have law degree and must know how to write and read briefs. Kind of assumed. Talk about what's interesting. And Tempus has a lot to offer. It's just kind of not forthcoming about it. And I wish they would be. I think there's a lot of opportunity to tell a really interesting story, especially when you're competing in New York, which is growing as a biotech hub, and Bay Area, which is definitely a biotech hub. They need a reason to say why you and not one of the hundreds of other biotechs looking for the same thing. That's really what it's all about. We talk about zero-sum game versus not zero-sum game, and this is what this means. It's not so much about, I want to grab this person because they could do the job. I want to attract and influence the person who wants this kind of job. But I cannot attract that person if I'm not crystal clear on what about this job is so interesting. So that's what's kind of missing, the sense of why this one? Why is it interesting? Why is it different? Why is it useful? Otherwise, it's pretty standard stuff. Fast apply, all the other good stuff, and then standard voluntary information, yada, yada, yada. I'm not going to get into that stuff. Nobody on the employer brand wants to think about that right now. So anyway, last piece of information, last thing to look at. Whoops, wrong thing to look at. Here we go. Let's go to LinkedIn. Let's go to LinkedIn page. Now, I think what's interesting is that, let's go to their posts. Look, Tempus is advancing data-driven precision medicine with the practical application of AI in healthcare. It is a bit of a mouthful. And, I get that you're trying to sound incredibly important, incredibly valuable, because the work you're trying to do is so critical, valuable, useful, important, all those good things. The problem is, could you tell more stories on LinkedIn? Yeah, I know that for the most part, doctors and healthcare professionals are not on LinkedIn, and there's reasons for that, right? We don't have to get into that. But to some extent, the people you're trying to hire, the bench scientists, the research scientists, the bioinformatics engineers, right? They are on LinkedIn enough. They're not on it like you and I are on it all day long, but they're on it enough to know that it's a resource to understand what is it like to work there. Now, if you were a different company with a consumer arm, I would have no problem saying, I can see how LinkedIn is a means to sell whatever you do, especially if you're a B2B company, right? Talking about your product, talking about the white papers, talking about new clients, talking about all sorts of wonderful stuff from a B2B standpoint. And that can allow you to kind of nudge out the employer brand stories. In a biotech, I think it's a tough sell. I think this is a place where you should be telling your story, because look at this. You've got 53,000 followers. They can't all be investor relations. They can't all be investment bankers. They can't all be VCs. They can't all be people, other biotechs looking at you. A lot of them are people who have put you on a list to consider you down the road. Not today, but maybe in 6 months, maybe in 12 months, maybe in 6 years. We don't know. But you are potentially on their list, their consideration set of companies to work for. So you should be putting out more information about what's it like to work there, why people choose to work here. Right now, they're using LinkedIn to talk about their technical expertise. Now, this is a double-edged sword, because showing your technical expertise is incredibly valuable. It shows, hey, this is a company that cares about innovation. And there are certain industries where that is 90% of your message to an employer brand standpoint, right? SpaceX doesn't have to say, this is why you should work here, because the answer is, look, we're going to Mars. Look, we're going to Mars. Look, I don't know if you knew that. We're going to Mars, right? That's their whole thing. We're doing these amazing things. We're inventing spacesuits and rockets and cars and dune buggies and whatever stuff, right? they're going to Mars. So for them, showing off their technical expertise on LinkedIn and platforms like it makes perfect sense. Biotech, you want to show that you're doing the research, that you're regularly producing reports, that you're regularly submitting compounds for clinical trials, or that you've met. And if you're not in biotech, it is complicated, right? This idea of how you get a drug to market is incredibly complicated. In many cases, it takes 10 years, and there's a number of hurdles between here and there where you can trip and fall and fail. So every step forward is cause for celebration. So I'm looking and I see a lot of, hey, we're welcome to this community. We've got a nice breakthrough. We've got, here's a, whether it's a white paper or a webinar or research findings, it's a lot of look, we're smart, look, we're smart, look, we're smart, which is valid. The problem is, so is every other biotech. Every other biotech has incredibly smart people. Now, here's the first one that isn't a we're smart, it's a Pride Month message. Now, it's 2 months back, so you can tell this isn't a regular occurrence with them, but they do a good job kind of bringing some, let's call it color to, and I don't mean that as a pun and a rainbow flag situation, but more, it's, visual color. Look at, this is a pretty austere visual. It's a pretty austere graphic. This blue is almost the same blue as LinkedIn. It might as well be just be black and white. Here you have an opportunity for other colors. Could have brought more faces into it, could have brought more a story into it. Here's a situation saying our ERG is hosting a range of activities. That's great. List them. List those activities. List where I might bump into those people. List the people those activities are helping. This is checking a box. It could, there's such a story here. It could be telling that story. And so I think it's just a missed opportunity here. Here's another, we're hiring. I think it's fine. But it's not that it's bad. There's nothing here that's bad. It's just missing the opportunity to be more itself, right? I'm going to tell you right now, I don't know what this visual means. I don't know how this is interesting. And I think a visual there might be helpful. Maybe telling me the difference between a senior business intelligence engineer and a business intelligence engineer. That's the opportunity to talk about there. So there's nothing wrong here. It's just that if they're trying to compete in a Bay Area, which they are, they need to figure out how to differentiate, how to do a better job telling the story why Tempus is different. And if you look at a lot of biotech companies like I do, you see that they all tend to kind of cluster up. Any company that starts to move out is going to have a huge opportunity to attract attention, to attract the attention of people who are very busy and very happy and very successful where they are, who don't think of Chicago as a biotech hub. This is a chance to kind of tell more of a story. Now, I didn't do a deep dive. I didn't look for other platforms it might be telling stories on. But I just started with the basics. Tempus is doing a good job establishing platforms, getting involved, doing the right things. I just think there's an opportunity to turn the volume up a bit, to bring some more life to these things. Well, I mean, the visuals alone, colorless, they're bland. And I know some of the people who work there, and again, not colorless, not bland. These are interesting people. This company is doing interesting work. They're solving interesting, complex problems. It is very hard to tell the complex problem story, but that in of itself is a complex problem. As someone who works at Tempus, I think that's time well spent to consider, how do we tell the individual employee story in a way that shows off the complexity, that shows off the interestingness, that shows off the values that we adhere to, that we claim to, and make it feel more real. So maybe it's not so much, and I don't have a script here, obviously. Maybe it's not so much they need to turn the volume up on their stories, is maybe they need to go deeper on the stories they tell. Find individuals and talk about, look, what do these values mean to you? And get away from, the one sentence, oh, I love people I love the people I work with, which is such whatever. But focus more about, okay, what does it mean to solve complex problems? And obviously for a lot of reasons, you can't get into what the problem was, but you can talk around it. There's a lot to be said about the feeling of solving a problem. In a lot of ways, that's what actually drives people. They love that kind of rush of cracking that puzzle, right? Clicking the last piece of the puzzle isn't inherently pleasurable. The feeling of, I did it, I took care of it, I muscled through, I persevered, I kept going even when I was frustrated, I did it. That's a feeling you can tell a story about. And I think there's opportunity there. So that's Tempus Labs. I'm going to stop sharing. Thanks so much for listening. Thanks so much for watching. If you like these, Find me on LinkedIn and tell me what the next company should be I should do a breakdown of. I love doing these. These are super exciting. I hadn't looked at Tempus Labs in probably a year and a half, and so I was thrilled for the chance to take a look at what they're up to. Lots of good stuff, lots of stuff to be done, right? That's great. So tell me, what's the next company I should review? Finally, if you like employer brand stuff, subscribe to my newsletter. I've done a whole revision. It's a whole rewrite. It comes out once a week, so it's not overwhelming. Subscribe at employerbrandheadlines.com. Thanks so much for watching. Thanks so much for listening, and I'll see you next time.